welcome to Mental Health Chats. We are working with you for better emotional fitness. I'm Clare Davis, and the aim of Mental Health Chats is to help us all talk more openly about mental health. If we can spot the signs, open up those conversations, and bring emotional fitness into our lives, we're not going to only help ourselves, but we're also going to be helping those around us to have more positive mental health. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're listening on podcast, please follow, because you will learn so much more about positive mental health. We've decided to run a series on emotional fitness every January to help people think more about their positive mental health for the new year. I'll be interviewing people from all around the world and from all walks of life about their emotional fitness. And today I've got Oliver Dingley. Hello, Ollie. How are you?
Hi, Claire. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us. And as you all noticed, I introduced him as Oliver, and he's better known as Ollie. So I'm going to call you Ollie throughout today.
Oliver when I'm in trouble with my mum. So
that's fair enough. That's a fair comment. That's like my children as well. So just to start off with, let's just start with the open question of who is Ollie Dingley?
Oh, wow. Okay. So, well, I'm a 28-year-old man who lives in Dublin, actually. I grew up in Yorkshire at a place called Harrogate, but 8 years ago, I actually left the UK and moved to Ireland. Now, I actually have a full-time job where I'm lucky enough to actually get to represent Ireland for the sport of diving. And I've been doing that sport now for over 20 years. It's a huge part of my life. And I'm very, very fortunate that my career really has centered around that since leaving secondary school. And it's taken me to all different corners of the world. And I'm very proud and lucky to say that I've also been able to go to 2 Olympic Games as well.
Oh, fantastic. Which Olympic Games did you go to, Ollie?
So I competed in the Rio 2016 Olympics and the Tokyo 2020 Games this past summer.
So it's fantastic to have you on, because so often we think about physical fitness, and you would need to have a lot of physical fitness for the diving, but we also need to think about our emotional fitness. So before we go into that, would you like to explain to everybody what else you do? You do full-time diving, do you? Is there anything else that you do?
Yes, I'm a full-time athlete, and I'm actually taking a step back from the diving for the time being to kind of figure out what I'm doing in life. I'm 28 now, and I've hit the point where there's things in life I would love to be able to do, but I'm also very physically able to carry on with the diving as well. So it's a very it's an important time of my life. Feels tricky at the moment, but there's lots of positives to take from it as well. And one of those positives is that I should be finishing university this January. So although I will be graduating the following year, I currently study film and broadcasting. So I feel like I'm in a very good place to be able to move forwards. I don't feel stuck, but being able to go to university and generally just keeping myself busy has kept me mentally happy through this period, which could also be a very, very challenging period, trying to really figure out what I'm doing in life.
Yeah, it must be very, very difficult when you get to a certain age when you are an athlete. So that goes quite nicely onto my first question of why do you think emotional fitness is so important, Ollie?
I personally think emotional fitness is so important in so many different scenarios, especially in my own personal life, my own personal experiences. If I go to my sport first, I'm in a sport where you have to perform and you have 2 seconds to perform. And your career can really be defined by those 2 seconds. My livelihood is in my income. Each year is assessed on how I perform at one competition. So that's 6 dives, 2 seconds for each dive. And that's what I have to do and be able to perform at that exact same time. It's a very, very strenuous appraisal in effect. But it's one thing I've really tried to hone in over the years is that mental ability to be able to calm, relax, but perform at that one moment in time. And it's something I sometimes get very wrong, but it is something that goes really, really well. So being in sports does have its stresses as well as its highs as well, but also going into my own personal life. Post 2016, I really, really struggled mentally. And it's really taken me a lot of hard work and graft to get into a position where I am today, where I still do sometimes struggle, but I'm in a position where I can stop and I can recognize those struggles. And I know the quirks that can help me get around those, but also really just take care of myself. So I think mental health from so many different aspects of your life that has
Yeah.
to be taken care of.
Mm. You know, I can't imagine that sort of pressure. You know, you've got those split seconds as an athlete, especially in the Olympics, and I can't imagine that pressure. So, Ollie, what would be really interesting is for our listeners to actually hear from you. What are your top 3 things that you do for your emotional fitness?
My emotional fitness. Now, I've tried so many different things throughout the years. Sometimes it doesn't work for me, but it works for other people, and vice versa as well. I always find keeping myself busy. I've never been one to sit down and just stay sitting down. Now, and when I do get into that frame of mind, I know that always kind of leads me to a bit of a negative path as well. So it's always important to, I find, keep moving. But having said that, if you don't keep moving and you do stop and you don't get to today's objective done, or you struggle to get the week's work done, it's also about being kind to yourself. And that's one of the things the lockdown has really taught me is, I mean, being in a sport like diving, it's all about perfection. I found I could be quite hard on myself sometimes, but being in COVID actually, and, taking a step back and, I set goals, but I didn't necessarily achieve them. I certainly didn't actually achieve them on a daily basis, but then it was really, you're in a situation where you're in your own headspace a lot while you're in lockdown. And I came to the conclusion, just be nicer to yourself, be kind to yourself. That's my biggest tip to anyone, is be kind to yourself. And because of that, it'll be so much easier to get to the next point. So that's always the big one for me, is being kind to yourself. But yeah, number 2, keeping busy. And that could be through anything. I mean, like many people, I had a lockdown hobby. I started off with the house plants, and unfortunately they all died. So I moved on to Lego. I figured out I couldn't kill Lego. So behind me, I have, it's just nice to be able to sit down and not look at a screen.
Yeah,
I do have a PlayStation and I really enjoy playing the PlayStation, but also sometimes if I start playing the PlayStation, I'll end up being there at 4 a.m. still playing the PlayStation. So
I'm gonna have to tell my boys that one. Ollie said this.
So I found the Lego is actually really, really useful. Whack on a podcast at the same time. It could be on the most randomest of topics, but having that in the background with that, because I've tried things like meditation, and that works for a lot of people. I don't have the attention span for it. Unless I'm doing something with my hands, I find there's no hope that I'm going to be able to do that. So finding a little hobby to do, and it could be something so simple. I find taking care of things, I think once you have something to look after as well, you take a lot more pride in it. And it's expensive, so I don't want to mess that around. I mean, like, I'm a sports person, but I'm also a student, so I do count the pennies. And so Legos was a good one for me. I also, kind of digressing here, but I also got a budgie during lockdown as well.
Oh wow!
That was a nice change. I never had a pet before, and it's just that sense of looking after something each day.
Oh, budgies are great. I've got a
They are, and I mean, this one's very, very loud. And since then, I've had other ones, and I feel sorry for the quiet ones, because I always just see that one looking at the loud one, just thinking, I've got 8 more years of this. But really, it's about number 1, being kind to yourself. Number 2, taking your time to do things, but keep busy to some extent. And number 3, find a little hobby, something that you can look forward to at the end of each day. It could be a TV series, and we all have, we'll have unlimited access to Netflix or anything. But I found, for me, not looking at a screen, because I tend to obsess and get stuck in too much when it comes to stuff like that.
Love it, love it, love it. So you did hone a little bit on me time, and I love to ask my guests what their favorite me time activity is, because it's back to being kind to ourselves. So often we feel guilty when we're having me time, and it's so, so important. So what is your favorite me time activity?
Yeah, I have to admit, I do feel guilty, and because I mean, being lucky enough to be in the sporting world, there's only so many amount of hours you can train a day. So there's
Yeah.
also a lot of downtime. And I've always felt very guilty that I'm not sat behind a desk. I've been able to go to some fantastic countries. Now, there's been a lot of hard work in that, but one of the things I've always struggled with is actually guilt, for no reason at all in hindsight. But I've always just felt too lucky to some extent where I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
So it really is about, just taking it back to yourself and finding something that, downtime hobby. The Lego, I absolutely love the Lego.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. And I've kind of started making my own mock versions of different things. So trying to be a bit more creative, and, it's a little hobby that I enjoy, and it's in my own little world. And but having said that, getting out and about, walking. I live in Dublin, a fantastic city.
Yeah.
Now, during lockdown, we had a 5K limit. But since lockdown, Dublin's on the coast, you're 10 miles away from the 𝗖𝗵𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. And while I'm lucky enough to still have a car due to a sponsorship for my diving, I get to experience all of that at the 20 minutes time. I could be at the coast. So it's fantastic. But really, I find, and also the other thing is communication.
Yeah.
I think I find a lot of solace in speaking to people, and especially throughout the years, it's something I've really, really struggled with. But reaching out to someone, does you the world of good, but just chatting to someone, that might also be doing someone else the world of good. You never know whose day you might be making, and it's good to have those connections, because I certainly would have been one to close myself off, and COVID's been a hard time for many people, but it gave me a bit of extra time personally. I've been very, very fortunate throughout the pandemic, but it gave me a little bit of extra time. And with that time, I used that to reconnect with old friends. It's great. And that for me was really, really nice. So trying to, in a way, put myself outside my comfort zone by forcing myself to go and socialize, but at the same time did me a world of good. So taking the time to speak to others would be, I mean, that's priceless, but it's not really a hobby, but it's something I certainly enjoy doing.
Oh, I love it, absolutely love it. And talking of you like talking, that you actually mentioned speaking to friends, you've started to work with some organizations on giving talks, haven't you, Ollie?
I have, yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, like many people, I've struggled with my own mental health, and so I've something I've always shied away from, but it's also something that's now started to become a little bit therapeutic as well, sharing my story and hearing other people's stories. And it's I was going to say amazing, but it's also scary how relatable it is to so many other people. And being a man as well, we're in a world with, I don't know, toxic masculinity, for example. Being in the sporting world where it's all macho, for example, you can kind of dig a bit of a hole for yourself. So I found that, some people, if one person learns something from my story and then can take that into their own lives, I feel very, very lucky that I can share that, and vice versa, listening to other people. But I've taken on a few different projects, speaking to different people, sharing my own story, different parts of my life. I'm 28, but I've had a bit of a wild life, to say the least, especially with my sports, and I've experienced things I, as a 10-year-old, would have only ever dreamed of. But there's been some hardship along the way as well. And I've certainly been able to overcome that in ways I personally never thought I would be able to. I remember some very dark days where, this constant cloud over your head and this pressure always pushing down. And it's a place I certainly never want to go back to. But I also find it enlightening talking about it as well. So it's something I've been doing. And during lockdown, I started to do a bit more of that, and I found myself becoming more confident in my own self as well by speaking about my own difficulties.
Brilliant. So if there are any organizations out there who need a speaker to talk about their story with regards to mental health, you can contact Ollie. So where can actually people find you, Ollie?
Yes, so I mainly use Twitter, so that's Oliver
Okay.
Dingley. I managed to get that handle before no one else got it, and I'm on. I have a website, and I also have an email address, which is oliverjdingley@gmail.com.
Lovely. And Twitter, what's your Twitter?
Just
name?
Oliver Dingley. So
Oliver
nice and
Dingley.
simple, can't go too
Brilliant.
wrong. And
Excellent.
yeah, I
Well,
don't have one of
thank
those
you.
awkward usernames.
Thank you so much, Ollie. You've been so enlightening. One of our guests for the emotional series, our emotional fitness series. You have been great with your insights and also opening up to let people know that we all have our ups and downs and we all need to work on our emotional fitness. So
Thank you
thank
very much
you.
for having me. Thank you.
Thank
Good luck with
you.
the rest of the series.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.